So you've probably heard the news that yesterday Blizzard let go, or is letting go, about 800 employees, which is about 8% of their workforce. And primarily these people are coming from public relations, marketing. It seems like more front-end stuff, and very few people are coming from developers, although one mobile studio of theirs under their mobile brand has been let go with about 75 people. Before we get into this, and I took the night to sleep on it. I thought about it last night. I thought about it this morning. I wanted to kind of clear my head because I do know some of the people that were let go, which means I have a bias, and I'm very. I had some strong emotions towards Blizzard regarding this, but I needed to sleep on it to kind of think more rationally through things. As a note, kind of a disclosure, I used to own Activision Blizzard stock. From 2007 before the big mergers, like mid 2007, and I got rid of my stock, sold it maybe 2014, 2015 or so. I don't own any anymore. And as another note, I was a marketing major for a couple years in college. I switched majors, and I'm not saying that makes me some expert on marketing or business, but I wanted to mention it because it shows I've had a long-term interest, one, in business or marketing specifically, and two, specifically with Blizzard. I was a stockholder of Blizzard, and so I did track their earnings calls. I listened to this stuff for years. So I have some relative scale of what's going on, I think, here that is worth mentioning. So this cut is supposed to be for a 20% increase to their developers across their most popular games, and this includes something such as Warcraft, Call of Duty, etc. Whether that comes to fruition, we won't know, and we have to wait and see. That's what they're claiming. This video is important because I want to mention that this is not the letting go of the community managers that people are seeming to be mostly worried about, because that's kind of the face that we see. This is actually a significant restructuring of how Blizzard operates as a company. This is not just, we're going to cut the CM team to save some money. This is, we are fundamentally changing how we will communicate with our audience. We are fundamentally changing the structure of the company, and we are changing entire divisions. We are removing essentially entire divisions of the company to better serve people and make more money. And now I get what I just said was it's not about the money, and ultimately it always is about the money, but this is not just a change for short-term gain. This is a long-term structural change to the company that I think a lot of people are not recognizing. This is global. They have let go a lot of people in North America, but J. Allen Brack recently put out a letter about this. I think it's on MMO Champions. You can find it a few different places. He almost literally says that this will be extending to their regional and global offices soon. So people in Europe, I know there's other branches in Asia, etc. Those people will feel the same firings as the North American office just felt yesterday. You need to also keep this context here that, Mike Morhaime left recently. Bungie has split away from Blizzard recently, or Activision Blizzard, whatever you want to call it. The Heroes of the Storm staff was cut, and the esports division was gutted recently. They lost 2 chief financial officers from 2 different parts of the Blizzard Activision team over the last year. They let go in this same firing process, or laying off process, whichever term you like to use. They lost their public relations manager. So that guy is also gone. I'm trying not to name names for some privacy reason. What else did they do? They were paying people off early last year in at least their European branch to leave the company or retire early. They were basically giving severance packages, or kind of optional severance packages, to encourage people to leave the company. This is at least in Europe. I think it might have happened elsewhere. They lost the Activision Publishing CEO in the last year. He, I think, left the company. These are all major high-up people that have left, or divisions that have left, or organizational change that they're making that are very large. So last year has been very tumultuous for Blizzard. Although the stock market in the US has gone down quite a bit from its peak late in 2018, it's actually recovered about half of those losses already. So the US stock market has recovered about half of the losses that started probably mid last year, I guess, really. However, Blizzard stock has not followed that same trend. So although Blizzard went down with the general market, it did not come back with the market. So Blizzard is now kind of an outlier in the overall average of the market in the US, which is an important thing to keep in mind. They missed earnings. So there's a quote that I'm going to say Bobby Kotick, but I'm forgetting his last name now. I don't care. Bobby. Old Bob's. He had a quote saying that this was their best financial year on record. And that's true. This is the best year they've ever had. However, I think a lot of people are not understanding that having the best year you've ever had doesn't matter in the eyes of an investor if it's not also better or equal to the earnings that people were expecting from you. Everyone expected Blizzard to have, financial and analysts expected Blizzard to have the best year ever this year. They did have the best year ever, but it wasn't as good as the experts expected, and that's a miss. That's called an earnings miss, and that's bad. So that it looks bad in the eyes of investors, and for a publicly traded company, that is not a good thing. Missing guidances is not a good thing, despite having the best year ever. That's a really annoying concept to have to wrap your head around, that even though they did better this year than they've ever done, it wasn't to the expectations that people had for them, so it wasn't good enough. That's why his statement of this was the best year ever, but we didn't realize our full potential, I'm paraphrasing here, that actually makes sense from a business standpoint. They had a great year, it wasn't great enough, and it did not meet expectations. So their earnings per share was $1.29 adjusted versus $1.28 estimated. That was good. Their revenues were like $2.84 billion, I believe, versus over $3 billion were estimated. So they actually missed their revenue by about 7 or 8%. And the worst thing is that let me find this here. The company expects for full year 2019 earnings of $2.10 per share on $6.3 billion of revenue. So there's that. And then the analysts estimated $2.54 per share. So $2.50 versus $2.10 per share. So they're missing their earnings per share by about 40 cents, or that's what they're expecting for this coming year. And their revenue was expected to be $7.25 billion for this coming year. But they have a guidance. Blizzard states it's going to be about 6.3. So they're missing their revenue by about $1 billion, which is about 15%, I think. I'm doing the head math here real quick. About 15% lower than estimates of experts. So this is all in the context of Blizzard had a great year. There's no denying that. It just wasn't great enough. And their forward guidance is lower than what analysts were expecting. These are really bad things. And they're not like catastrophic companies folding up and they're going to fire everyone. They're not going bankrupt, but they are not going to meet expectations of a publicly traded company. And as much as that sucks, I mean, there are some problems with capitalism. This is one of those examples where I think there are failures of capitalism to some degree, where being great is not always good enough. You have to exceed expectations. That's why companies that are losing money will sometimes still have a huge jump in their price stock, not because they lost money, but because they lost less money than analysts expected them to lose. They did better than people thought, even though they're doing badly. That will still cause their stock price to increase. So I'm not an expert on trading stocks. I'm not saying you should buy Blizzard stock. I'm not saying anything like that. And I'm not defending their choice to fire the people they fired or to fire anyone or lay off anyone. But I'm trying to put some context into the statement that Bobby made and why they're doing what they're doing. They're doing it, ultimately, yes, they're doing it to increase their value in the eyes of stockholders or shareholders, to increase the chance of their stock going up in value. But it is largely, I feel, because they missed guidances and that their forward projection for this year of 2019 is also below expectations. As a caveat to this, or as a side note to this, their stock is up 1% after hours. So last night, they made this announcement. The stock went up 1%. It didn't tank. In the eyes of the consumers, the hardcore gamer that's a huge fan of Blizzard, you and I, we were disappointed. We're saddened by this. This is one of our great lines of communication between Blizzard and to us as fans of their games. And that's crushing to see the people that we knew, the face of Blizzard for a lot of us, are getting fired or getting let go, getting laid off. I use fired and laid off interchangeably. There's a difference, so please excuse that. So they went up 1% afterwards. It wasn't catastrophic. People I mean, I'm not saying that people were really excited in terms of investors jumping in, but people weren't scared that Blizzard is failing because of this news. They said, oh, this is great. They're streamlining. They're going to make a little more money, or they're going to not make more revenue, but their profit may go up. They're cost cutting. They're thinking outside their box. They're trying to change up their system of communication. These are things that in the eyes of an investor are probably a good thing. I mean, as a fan of their company, as a gamer, these are bad things to us. We are losing value. We put money into this company by buying their games or buying their loot boxes or whatever in Overwatch. But I guess Hearthstone also has got loot boxes, I guess. So anyway, despite us putting money into it, we expect to get the game back. But a part of it is also, we know we're paying them. We're getting other things. We're getting esports from them, which is big for some people, not everyone. We're getting communication from them in the form of their forums or on Reddit or on Twitter, which a lot of that comes from the community managers. So now our dollar is buying less for us, at least in the short term. Maybe long term, they really do increase the number of developers because of these layoffs, and that turns into more content for the World of Warcraft, more new game modes in Hearthstone or Overwatch. Maybe that's true. The problem is in the short term, it's a loss for us. I mean, flat out, we're losing. As of yesterday, we lost a lot, and we won't see payback on that maybe for months or years, if ever. I mean, we have to have faith, and it's difficult to have faith in a company that has had all these significant changes over the last year structurally that I've laid out already, not to mention what they've done to the games that we love, like Heroes of the Storm, canceling any sort of tournament mode for Hearthstone. That's probably never going to come out. The kind of flopped launch of BFA and the missing content, such as the allied races. It's tough to have faith in them, and I'm not saying people should. But I think if you do, you may get paid off in the long run. If you don't, and let's say you drop everything Blizzard, you come back in a year, take a look. Maybe the game development has improved enough to make these cuts worth it to you. That's me looking at it half glass full as best I can, given that a lot of really great people hundreds of great people lost their livelihood yesterday. So it's not a good situation for them at all. I want to point out that I think it was about 7 years ago, Blizzard laid off 600 employees that were largely from their PR division. This happened 6 years ago, and that was all within Blizzard. That was not Activision Blizzard. It wasn't from the Activision side. This was just in the Blizzard side. They laid off like about 600 people in customer service restructuring. I think that's when they cut a lot of game masters also. So keep in mind this has happened before, and that was probably a larger percentage of Blizzard employees due to being 600 just from Blizzard, as opposed to this current one being about 800 people from Activision Blizzard and also their their mobile subsidiaries. So the summary here, so all this news going on, right? The big thing to keep in mind is that Blizzard will never communicate with us again in the way that they have before. And what's important about that is I think a lot of people would already argue that their communication was not very good. It was not great in a lot of ways, especially recently. We will never have the same level of communication. They are fundamentally altering their corporate structure. This is not just, we're just going to cut back on some of the community managers and have fewer of them do more work. They pretty much axed the department. I mean, they wiped out a huge portion of their community managers, PR people, etc. This is, I mentioned already, they took down their public relations manager, like one of their higher up guys. He is gone. This is a corporate restructuring. This is not just a minor cost savings thing. They are changing the way they're communicating to customers, and how they have done it so far will not be how they ever communicate with us again, in my personal opinion. I mean, this is all, I have no insider knowledge. This is how I feel about it based on what I'm reading and based on my limited knowledge of how businesses work. Yeah, so in the short term, I would say this does not mean that communication is ending permanently. I think in the short term, it's going to be cut back significantly. Like there will be very little communication short term as they go through this restructuring process. This is step one, get rid of everyone, free up a bunch of budget. Step two is, okay, how do we fill this vacuum? They might not fill it. I don't know if they have a plan. My guess is they will fill it. Most companies this size will have some sort of PR people, right? Can't have no PR, but it might be more traditional PR rather than what we've kind of had, which is community managers to some extent stepping into the official forums or maybe on Reddit or Twitter and replying to people. I don't think we will get that anymore. I think that is a dead and gone thing, probably forever. So its communication is going to look and feel very different. I think we're going to expect a slight increase in your traditional PR statements. We will probably get more announcements on Blizzard's websites or through the Battle.net launcher. I think these are going to be very PR laden. These are not going to be, they're going to be boring. They're going to be like, oh, there's a new patch upcoming. I don't expect there to be as much as we listen to you, we hear what you're saying, here's what we're going to do, like anything like that, which hasn't really been that common from them anyway recently, but I don't expect it really to come back anymore. I will say, I want to put it lightly that this is a net loss for us. I said this earlier. Even if the money was 100% reallocated to developers, which I'm really honestly skeptical that Blizzard is going to do that. I really don't think it's going to happen. I think some of it will. I think they will be follow through with their word that they're going to put more of this money towards developers, but I am skeptical that all of it would by any means, nor that it would be a 20% increase to developers on their most profitable titles. I just don't see that happening. It could, but it might take years. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. I would also say that to me, this is a problem because it's not just that the game development isn't the failure. To me, that it's not just the only failures Blizzard has had. Certainly, like I said, BFA has had problems. Some of these allied races still aren't out. There haven't been a lot of new modes in Hearthstone or Overwatch in a long time. Fundamentally, there's problems with the development. That's true. I'm not defending that. But I don't think that their major failures are there. I think some of their biggest problems are the lack of communication with players. I think that they not only fail to talk to us a lot, they fail at listening to us. And obviously, there are a huge amount, incredible amount of garbage ideas from the community. Like, it's overwhelming how many just atrocious ideas community gamers in the Blizzard community, WoW, Overwatch, etc., think they have a great idea for the game, but it is garbage, like just remotely insanely garbage. And I don't mean to insult people. There's some great ideas out there too. There's really good ideas, but some of them are so bad that it's clear that people don't either have a grasp of game development, how to keep a game going for a long term, how to profit off a game, which unfortunately is a key caveat to success as a game developer, or just how to balance a game. There's so many problems, but there are, for every garbage idea, there are some good ones. And at the very least, the goodwill, and goodwill is a legitimate thing in marketing, or generating goodwill has huge value, huge implications for a company. Blizzard's communication failures could, even if they don't turn into direct changes into the game, they could have done better, and they could do better now or going forward in a way that would improve their goodwill with consumers. Now, that opportunity has been forfeited. They've given up the opportunity of generating goodwill to their hardcore fans. I would say hardcore fans mean people that visit their official forums or visit their subreddits for their games, or tweet at them with any frequency. Like, that hardcore group of fans, goodwill with them has been forfeited by this. Blizzard will not be able to have any goodwill anytime soon with them. They might pull these fans back. They might not lose them at all. They might just have made them really mad. But there's just no way that Blizzard is going to generate a lot of goodwill in the short term with any of us. They've angered us. They've insulted us. They've made a lot of questionable decisions from our perspective. And it's questionable largely because the communication isn't there. Nothing they ever say really helps us understand why they're doing what they're doing. And maybe they don't owe it to us. I'm not saying they do. But by leaving us in the dark, they certainly aren't generating goodwill. They're probably digging away all the goodwill they built up over the years. And it feels bad as relatively hardcore fans of Blizzard games. Between you and me, I was very upset with this whole thing. This, as politely as I can possibly say it, I dropped a few words towards Blizzard's direction last night that I normally don't use publicly for a few reasons, but they certainly offended me because I have, like I said, friends involved in this, and I really needed to calm down to not give like a knee-jerk response to the whole thing. At the end of the day, hundreds of people probably many of those very good people that worked very hard, that some of them that we knew lost their jobs. And that's tough. It's always tough. It was not performance based. To reiterate, this was not, oh, you guys weren't doing good enough, you're all getting fired, we're going to hire new people to do your job. This was, oh, we are not going to fund your department anymore. You're gone. Every one of you are gone. I'm sorry. Here's your severance package if you're lucky enough to have one. And we're going to restructure the company and we're going to move forward in a new direction completely. That's the key point people need to understand. And they need to understand that this was due to expectations from Wall Street, not just because they had such a great year. They should have just been able to pay these people. It was they didn't have a good enough year. Even though it was a great year, the best year, it wasn't as good as people expected. So those are the key takeaways. The year wasn't as good as they expected. The forward guidance isn't as good as people expected. And they are completely restructuring in a way that will change how they communicate with us permanently going forward. And we need to understand this is not temporary. This is a large structural change. And Blizzard and their PR, their CMs, it is never going to be the same. They will not be going back to this. It doesn't make any sense to cut everything, start from ground zero, and then build back up in the same direction. They're rebuilding. They literally demolished what they had. They're starting fresh. I don't know what it's going to be. They might not have a plan yet. I really don't know, but that's where they're at. With that said, I wish all the best to those who were let go. I know it's going to be tough for them, but I hope they will land on their feet. A lot of them, I'm very positive a lot of them will be leaving the video game industry. I don't see any reason why, PR people are PR people. They public relations, front end management, they won't necessarily stay to gaming. And that's going to be a loss for the gaming community largely, but I really hope that they land on their feet. Anyway, if you have any thoughts, I genuinely believe that the subscribers to my channel have, based on YouTube comments, they tend to be much more articulate than the average YouTube comment. So I believe people that follow this channel tend to be rather intelligent people. I would really like to hear your thoughts on what you think is happening. So if you want to, leave a comment below, because I'm trying to get as much information, as many opinions as I can, and kind of scoop up an idea, a forward-thinking thought about what Blizzard is doing. I need as much input as I can get to do that, and I think anyone's insight would be useful right now. With that said, keep in mind, we are the hardcore gamers of the Blizzard community. The people that buy Call of Duty, the ones that buy it on console, a lot of them, they never go on Reddit. They don't go on the WoW forums. They don't go to Twitter. They don't know this happened. This is a blip on the radar for Blizzard in terms of the number of people that are aware of what happened and the number of people that care. We're like the 1% of Blizzard fans, maybe the 10% at the very best. So it doesn't scare them. The outrage that's on the WoW forums, etc., or the Blizzard forums, etc., Blizzard doesn't care. It's an expected loss. Like they know some people will be upset. Some people quit their games. But how many people are really going to do that? 1% of people, maybe? If every single person that read the news quit, that's maybe 2 or 3% of all the people that buy their games. We are a minority of Blizzard fans. And for better or worse, that means Blizzard can take this PR hit, literally, not just to the people that they fired, but also in terms of the goodwill from the consumer, and they can roll with it. It's going to be a net gain for them. They will. This is almost assuredly a successful business decision by Blizzard, and that sucks because I think it's a terrible decision. I think morally it's an awful decision. I think but I think capitalistically, or based in the terms of capitalism, it's probably what they're going to feel is the right decision. And I know the people at top are getting those huge bonuses, but those huge bonuses are going to be there regardless of this cut. I think this was a restructuring, and I don't know. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I am not. Just to be clear, this is crap. Again, to put it nicely, but it is a business decision that I think will make sense to them long term. I think they are probably very happy with the choice despite the outrage, because again, we are a minority, so it's unfortunate. With that said, anyway, if you have any thoughts, please let me know. I'd like to hear them. And again, I wish the best of luck to everyone. And this was all in one take. I have a little semi-script I wrote over here, but for the most part, I was going off the rails. So hopefully I didn't ramble too much. But thank you for your time.